You ever been there, trying to explain something on a phone to a parent or a grandparent, and you both just end up totally frustrated? Yeah, it's a classic story. But what if I told you the reason behind all that tension is actually one of humanity's greatest strengths? Okay, let's get into it. We start with Minh. He's a psychology student, and he's just trying to show his grandfather how to use a ride-hailing app. A few wrong taps later, this is the thought that pops into his head. And let's be honest, it's a question a lot of us have probably asked ourselves at some point.
And at that very same moment, this is what's going through his grandfather's mind. You see, he's looking at the world through a completely different lens, one where core values like patience and saving your money are what's really important, not getting everything instantly through an app.
So, who's right here? The tech-savvy student or the wise grandfather? Well, psychology tells us that might be the completely wrong question to be asking. The real and much more interesting question is, why does the human brain even create these differences to begin with?
To answer that, we first have to unpack a really common mistake we all make. We tend to just lump all the differences between generations together and call it getting older. But you know what? It's so much more nuanced than that.
The real key is splitting apart these two powerful forces. On one side, you've got developmental change, and on the other, generational difference. They sound kind of similar, but trust me, they explain totally different things about why we are the way we are.
Okay, so developmental change, that's the stuff that happens to literally all of us. It's the universal biological roadmap we're all on as we age. For instance, tons of research shows that our reaction times tend to slow down in our 70s. That's not a Gen Z thing or a boomer thing. It's just a human thing. It's a consequence of aging that today's youth will one day experience too.
But generational difference? Now that's about the world that built you. It's the unique time in history, the society, and the technology you grew up with. Minh's grandfather fumbling with the smartphone isn't because his brain is somehow deficient. Nope. It's because his brain already became an absolute expert at navigating a world that existed decades before the internet. He's not failing at our world. He already succeeded at his.
So why does the brain do this? Why does it seem to sort of lock in a worldview from an earlier time? Well, it turns out this isn't a bug, it's a feature, a really sophisticated evolutionary strategy, a kind of division of labor that happens across our own lifespan.
Just think of your brain's development in two major phases. First, there's a wide-open period of exploration, and that's followed by a second period of intense, focused specialization. And each of these phases has a critical job to do.
Childhood is basically the brain's research and development department. It's a time of unbelievable plasticity. The brain is like a sponge, just creating this massive web of connections to absorb everything about the world without any judgment. The main mission here is just to learn and explore, all while being protected from the immediate pressures of, survival.
But hey, you can't stay in R&D forever, right? To actually be effective in the world, you have to act. So in early adulthood, the brain starts this process called synaptic pruning. It literally trades that limitless flexibility for raw efficiency. It trims away the connections it doesn't use to create a stable, reliable model of the world. And that's what lets us make decisions quickly and effectively.
Now, this reframes the whole situation in a really cool way. When you look at it from this perspective, Minh's grandfather isn't stubborn or outdated at all. He's actually a triumph of brain development. His mind did exactly what it was supposed to do. It became a highly optimized tool for thriving in the specific world of the 20th century.
Okay, so we've got the brain's internal game plan down, but what about all the external forces? I'm talking about the huge historical events and cultural shifts that an entire generation goes through together. These things play a massive role in sculpting our core values.
Just take a look at this timeline. If your most impressionable years were shaped by things like the Great Depression and World War II, your brain is naturally going to prioritize stability and security. But if you grew up during the explosion of the internet and global connection, your brain is going to be wired to value things like personal freedom and access to information. The world you're born into really does become the blueprint for your values.
And this right here is the result. The silent generation often developed core values around frugality and security, and for them, these were literal survival strategies. In contrast, you have millennials and Gen Z, who, facing a different set of challenges, often prioritize things like mental health and personal freedom. Neither set of values is inherently better. They're just adaptive responses to very different worlds.
This also gives us a totally new way to look at something like teenage rebellion. What an older generation might see as just disrespectful defiance, developmental psychology sees as a crucial evolutionary mechanism.
It's the young brain doing its job, doing its basic research by testing out new values to see which ones are best suited for the world as it is right now, not as it was 50 years ago.
So this all builds to what I think is the most fascinating idea of all. We're always taught to see the generation gap as a problem, right? A source of conflict. But what if it's not a problem we need to solve? What if it's our species' secret weapon?
Let's just run a little thought experiment. Imagine a world where every single person at every age had that hyper-flexible, constantly learning brain of a child. What do you think would happen to society?
The result? It would be chaos. Total social chaos. We'd have no stable traditions, no wisdom passed down from one generation to the next. Everyone would just be starting from scratch, all the time. Society needs an anchor, a foundation of established knowledge to build on.
Okay, now let's flip the scenario. What if we were all born with the stabilized, specialized brain of an adult, completely resistant to any new ideas?
The result there would be stagnation. We'd be perfectly adapted, but for a world that doesn't exist anymore. When we're faced with new challenges, like climate change or AI, we'd be totally unable to innovate, and eventually, we would fail.
And there it is. That's the crucial point. The tension between young and old isn't a mistake. It is the solution. It is nature's absolutely ingenious balancing act. The young push for innovation and adaptation, while the old provide the stability and wisdom of experience. And we need both to survive.
You see, this means the goal isn't for Minh to fix his grandfather, or for his grandfather to correct Minh. The real goal is translation. It's about recognizing that each generation is basically speaking a different language of adaptation, one that was shaped by their specific time. Our job is just to learn how to be translators for each other.
And that leaves us with a final thought to take away with you. Think of your own identity like a ship. The wisdom of past generations provides the sturdy timber that it's built from. But as you sail into a future with new storms and new destinations, you have to decide which of those planks are essential for stability and which ones do you need to replace so your ship can navigate whatever comes next.